Welcome into another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today I'm looking at Dynasty stashes turning toward 2025. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's go. First player, Ben Sinnott. So obviously he's been a disappointment in 2024, but I haven't given up on him. This year he has a measly 3 catches for 18 yards and touchdown. Basically hasn't played. He's been way behind Zach Ertz and even has played behind John Bates at times. However, why is he a Dynasty stash? Well, he was second round pick in the 2024 NFL draft. The new Dan Quinn, Adam Peters regime selected him. So this regime, which is obviously not going anywhere, selected him. They obviously had long-term plans for Ben Sinnott. I do think he will get involved eventually. We know tight ends can take a long time to develop. Now, I'm not going to say that Ben Sinnott is Trey McBride because he's not. He was not Trey McBride as a prospect coming out. But Trey McBride didn't do much of anything as a rookie. He wasn't quite as bad. He sat behind Ertz, just like Ben Sinnott, and he had 3 catches for 24 yards until Ertz got hurt and forced him into the starting lineup. The difference is that Ertz has stayed healthy this year. So Ben Sinnott has never had an opportunity really to play. Now, Sinnott turns 23 in June 2025. Tight ends rarely break out before age 25. Development just takes a while at that position. He was an extremely raw prospect anyway. Look, am I saying he's 100% going to break out next year? No. But I can tell you what's going to happen. I can tell you that in shallower dynasty leagues, people are going to say, well, he didn't do anything. I'm just going to cut him. Oh, well, he's not going to be anything. I would not do that. I would hang on to Ben Sinnott for the opportunity that sometimes tight ends take time. And he's still a very, very young player who I have not given up on long-term at all. Next player, Cam Akers. So I've talked about Akers a lot on the channel. It's wild to me that Akers is only 25 years old. I would think he's a lot older because it feels like he's been in the NFL forever. I feel like I've been talking about Cam Akers forever. Now, this year, he's actually had 72 carries, 275 yards, touchdown, 3.8 yards a carry, and 10 catches for 49 yards. Split time between the Texans and the Vikings, settled into a nice role lately. And in week 9, he took the backup job from Ty Chandler. And since then, over the last 4 weeks, 32 carries, 128 yards, and 6 catches, 33 yards, touchdown there. 8 carries and 1.5 catches per game. He's looked healthy, decent, a backup running back. He's looked like he can be a backup running back in the NFL. Now, why do I have Akers as a dynasty stash? Well, we know that the running back position in the NFL is fragile, and running backs can bounce around and break out later. See Raheem Mostert, Kareem Hunt, players like that. This year has been a massive outlier, right? I mean, running backs don't usually stay this healthy. I mean, what are the major injuries? There was Joe Mixon, which is what allowed Cam Akers to play in the first place. And then Isaiah Pacheco. And other than that, really, those are the 2 main ones. Not a lot of running backs have missed a lot of time outside of course, Jonathan Brooks missing all of the time. But, he was injured not on the NFL field. We've seen Akers hang around the NFL despite 2 Achilles tears. Like I said, Kareem Hunt went from the couch to a starting role with relevance this year. Amir Abdullah has had fantasy relevance this year. It can happen for Jeremy McNichols at times. It can happen for random running backs. Who knows if the ball will bounce Akers' way in 2025. These are the types of players I just recommend don't cut them. Don't cut them. Hang on to these running backs who are going to continue their NFL careers. I just wouldn't release them because we've learned that running backs come from nowhere to fantasy relevance all the time. Now, my next player, Calvin Austin. Now, I really like Calvin Austin as a prospect, but unfortunately, he never really locked down a role in 2023 when he was a rookie, despite an injury to Deontay Johnson early in the year, and then there were struggles from Allen Robinson. They still never went to Calvin Austin. Then he kind of fell off the radar in the offseason because the Steelers drafted Roman Wilson. Even though they traded Johnson away and didn't replace him, there just was not much interest in Calvin Austin. But he's actually been pretty good. 20 catches, 354 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1.8 catches, and 32.2 yards a game. He's played every game. Roman Wilson's injury opened the door for some playing time. And we've seen that Austin has flashed with some big plays, both as a wide receiver and as a returner. And, yes, the volume hasn't been there, but we're seeing something. We're seeing something that could maybe be good for the future. Now, why do I have Austin as dynasty stash? So here's the thing. I think I've been in the past too quick to just dismiss players, just dismiss them, especially wide receivers, who showed something, but didn't get into the fantasy relevant range in their first 2 years. Now, yes, does that mean that that player probably won't be a superstar? Sure. Does it mean that they're worse than incoming day 3 rookies with bad prospect profiles? Probably not, right? Players who've actually been good in the NFL are probably better than your random 6th round rookie who we've never heard of. So Austin could easily be a starter on the 2025 Steelers. And you never know. I mean, it's not the same, but just to give you a kind of example, Jalen Tolbert is a player who did little to nothing his first 2 years, and he's been a starter for the Cowboys this year. Now, did Jalen Tolbert win you a dynasty title? No. Could you have sold Jalen Tolbert for a couple of thirds? Yes. So this is the kind of thing. When we're looking at stashes, we're probably not looking at league winners. We're looking at players with flip value. And I think that Calvin Austin falls into that category. Now, if you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. Right now, I'm trying something new. I'm offering a Black Friday 25% discount at all tiers. So you can have a whole month for 25% off at whatever tier you choose. Links in the top right corner, patreon.com/fantasy advice. I'm going to keep delivering more Patreon only content. Pretty sure we're going to be going to 2 YouTube videos a week during the off season because there is content that is just an algorithm loser that I'm going to do for the patrons only instead of trotting it out here on the YouTube channel where I know it's going to fail. So keep in mind, that's another benefit of signing up for the Patreon. And with that said, we'll jump into our next player. So we probably expected a quarterback to show up on here. Daniel Jones is my choice. Of course, is my favorite type of stash. I love stashing quarterbacks with rushing upside in superflex leagues. And with Jones signing with the Vikings practice squad, this is a good moment to stash him. Now, this year, Jones was not so good. 63.3% completion. That's okay. 8 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That's not great. 6.1 yards per attempt. That's bad. 207 passing yards a game. 67 carries, 265 yards, 2 touchdowns, 26.5 rushing yards a game. That's fine. I mean, he was bad this year. He fell off big time in 2023 and 2024. He'd never been a great quarterback. He'd never averaged 7 yards per attempt in any season. And that's kind of the line I use. 7 yards. If you're above 7 yards per attempt, I usually think, okay, this is a player who should be a starting quarterback. If you're below it, I'm skeptical that you're really a starting quarterback. That's usually the line I use. So why do I have Jones as a dynasty stash? Well, he's a high-end backup quarterback, decent rushing upside, future value. Now, he's not a disaster like some backup quarterbacks. Who do we think is better, really? Jones or the quarterbacks the Giants replaced him with? I think Jones is better. From 2019 to 2022, the first 4 years of his career that earned him that big contract, Jones wasn't a terrible quarterback. 64% completion, 60 touchdowns to 34 interceptions is pretty good. 6.7 yards per attempt, that's a little low. 214.9 passing yards a game. I wish that were better. 5.8 carries and 31.6 rushing yards a game. That's pretty good. So with the rushing upside, I would say Jones probably averages out as a low-end starting quarterback. They're not good numbers, but there are some current NFL starters who are worse, and Jones provided some rushing upside. Now, I think Jones is auditioning for a bridge role on the Vikings in 2025 as he signed with them this week. The Vikings seem to understand they cannot keep Sam Darnold because he's going to demand a big free agent contract. J.J. McCarthy may have suffered some setbacks in his meniscus recovery, but I don't think the Vikings want to sit him for multiple years more. And I think Darnold's free agent contract, I'm not saying it's going to be a massive deal, but I do think it's going to have about 2 years of guaranteed money, which means it's not going to work for the Vikings. So the Vikings need a bridge backup quarterback for 2025. Jones is the favorite for that role. We've seen Kevin O'Connell make a lot of quarterbacks successful, from Joshua Dobbs to Nick Mullins, and Jones is better than either of those two. So I think he's someone that should be rostered in all Dynasty Superflex leagues, just in case he resigns as the backup, J.J. McCarthy is not healthy, and then Jones starts some games and he'll have more value then. Now, my final player, Kendre Miller. And Miller has had an unlucky career so far. I mean, he's dealing with injuries, the hatred of former head coach Dennis Allen. Miller is on IR because Allen hated him so much that he put Miller on injured reserve, even though he's healthy, which is a wild story if you really think about it. But regardless, Miller's only played 2 games this year. 9 carries, 52 yards, and 2 catches for a yard. Obviously, these are not great numbers, but the other 2 Saints backup running backs, Jamal Williams, has been injured all year, and Jordan Mims has looked horrible. So, when he comes back, he's eligible in week 14. He might have a role. Now, why do I have Kendre Miller as a dynasty stash? Well, his career is not over yet. So he turns 23 in June 2025. He's far younger than rookie running backs like Marshawn Lloyd and Blake Corum. It's not too late for Miller to turn his career around. Now, he has the path to being the RB2 for the Saints in 2025. The Saints are buried in dead cap. They're going to have to cut Jamal Williams because he's terrible and they can't afford him. They have needs across their entire roster. They also have Taysom Hill at a high cap hit. Miller is probably going to be competing with Mims, some sort of day 3 pick or a minimum salary veteran for this RB2 job in 2025. Alvin Kamara is going to be 30 next year. There may be more work open behind him. So it's possible Miller gets another chance. I don't think he's had a fair shot. And, there are stashes you can make that, are worse than Miller and who have less upside. He was a really good prospect coming out of TCU. So I haven't lost interest in Miller. I'm much less likely to give up on running backs than wide receivers because running backs only need one chance to get into volume. And then, they could be fantasy relevant. Now, let's get into a little bit of NFL news. The Bears fired head coach Matt Eberflus. Let's just say it's been a long time coming. Eberflus has always been a terrible head coach. I said when he was hired that he was not qualified to be a head coach at that time. Not qualified. And he wasn't qualified. And then this offseason, I said that the Bears should have fired him to part ways with their old coaching regime before he had a chance to ruin/work with their rookie quarterback. But they didn't do that. So they didn't listen to me. And maybe they should have. Because, now we're getting to a place where offensive coordinator Thomas Brown will be the interim head coach. Now, Brown became the interim offensive coordinator after Shane Waldron was fired. So he goes from passing game coordinator to OC to head coach in 3 weeks. I mean, the Bears are a joke. We know that. I don't think firing Eberflus is going to change anything. Brown was calling the plays. He's still going to call the plays. Shane Waldron was the one you needed to get rid of. I just hope that the Bears have Ben Johnson as their head coach next year. I didn't see anything from Thomas Brown in this last game that was, exciting. There were some problems. So I think they need a new head coach. Ben Johnson is who I have my eyes on, but there are other qualified candidates. I just hope that they finally make a good head coaching hire because the Bears have not been doing that lately. Now, got a couple of Patreon questions, so we'll go into those. Do you think Brian Thomas's lack of target volume, that's interesting, is a red flag in any way? Is he a player capable of demanding over 110 targets a year? The answer is absolutely no issue. I wouldn't be surprised if he hits 110 targets this year. He'd need a shade under 8 targets a game with Lawrence back and Davis and Kirk out to do it. I mean, it's possible. Now, I think we just have to rewind to before Thomas's injury. Before the injury, he was averaging 4.3 catches and 73.3 yards a game, 4 touchdowns, which paces for 73 catches, 1,246 yards, 10 touchdowns, 109 targets over a full 17-game season. No concern. I mean, he was injured in a game since then and then hadn't recovered and then had to play with Mac Jones. And he was decent in week 11 after he looked like he had recovered. I think if he had just sat out the games after he was injured, no one would be talking about this. But because he played hurt, we're talking about, I'm not sure. Zero concerns with Brian Thomas. I mean, realistically, who's been better, Brian Thomas or Marvin Harrison Jr.? If you're concerned about Brian Thomas, you better be twice as concerned about Marvin Harrison Jr. because he's been way worse. So just, that the answer is zero concerns whatsoever. What's your view on dealing with old-ish wide receivers like Deontay Kirk or DJ Moore? I have a young core of wide receivers only starting bye weeks. In general, I don't mind if I feel like I can project a few years of actual production. What I usually use is, do I think I can start this player week 1, 2026? The answer is no. I feel like there's no need to roster such a player. The reason I use that is because that's kind of a barometer of if they're going to have value in the 2026 offseason. To look at these specific wide receivers, DJ Moore, clear yes. He's still relevant. Christian Kirk is a clear no. And Deontay's kind of on the fence because he was relevant on the Panthers and totally disappeared on the Ravens. So I do take it on a case-by-case basis, but that's kind of how I think about it. Now, if you like the video, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. As always, the best way to support the channel is to subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, available on the Patreon. Dynasty starts at redraft and more. Sign up right there. 25% discounts available at all tiers today. And every sign up helps support my independent fantasy football content. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all